folks. Welcome to In Layman's Terms with Nohra. We talk to you about issues that might seem wonkish, but what we try to do is we try to simplify them and make them so that you have enough information. If you're interested, you can go back and do more research on them. Today, I'm very excited about our guest. His name is Tony Ortiz. He has a famous social media presence called Current Revolt. And Tony, I'm going to start by saying, as a venture capitalist, I really like two things about what you do. I like the kind of slight irreverence. I'm always like this myself, and I always have been. And I also like the fact that you were not going to sell your soul and take money. Again, that's something I really, really respect, because, I gave people money. We invested in companies. Of course, people invested in my fund. So that's something that's a big deal for me. So we're going to talk about redistricting today, especially in Texas. I'd like to expand it a little bit more for our audience. But first, I want to hear about you and how you got to where you are today. And then we'll jump right into the Texas redistricting and your thoughts about it.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it, and appreciate your kind words. Yeah, my name's Tony Ortiz. I founded Current Revolt back in 2020. We are the easiest, simplest way to describe it is we're like a TMZ or a National Enquirer for Texas news. And we do a lot of investigative stories, and we cover a lot of the things that mainstream media won't, mainstream media in Texas won't. And it just so happens that a lot of what they won't cover has to do with affairs and scandals and different things that politicians are doing, DUIs, DWIs, and all that kind of crazy stuff. And for some reason, mainstream media kind of steps away from that, but we don't, and we cover it. I'm a conservative. I'm a Republican. I vote Republican. I've only ever voted Republican my entire life. But in Texas, it just so happens that a lot of the um, kind of weird and degenerate stuff that happens in politics happens to be committed by Republicans. So I do end up covering a lot of Republican misbehavior in Texas.
Uh, okay, so you grew up in Texas?
I actually grew up in Chicago. Moved out to Texas in 2004, but grew up in Chicago, the Lower East Side of Chicago, some more kind of the more ghetto slash poor area of Chicago, which
Sure.
wasn't so bad at the time.
I went to
Um,
business school. I went to business school at Booth, so I know the South Side very
okay,
well. Yeah, I know
yeah. So you're
Chicago
super
well.
familiar, yeah. But yeah, I came out here in 2004 and have been here ever since.
That's great. So, I'm already going off topic here, but what did you think of um Mrs. Paxton doing what she did when she did, given that we know that the Attorney General is going to be going against Cornyn? So, what do you think of that whole thing?
Yeah, it's such
I
an
know it's off
interesting,
topic, but
yeah, it's an interesting situation, right? So, Attorney General Ken Paxton had previously admitted to affairs in the past, with several affairs, or I should say
so
multiple
with an
affairs, not
S, like
several.
plural.
Yeah, yeah. His staff had caught him multiple times. They claimed with the same woman, or he claims with the same woman. But he admitted this, and even the woman admitted to it, right? And so, I'll give it to Mrs. Paxton, Senator Paxton. She, at least from a public point of view, has given everything to try to move on from that. I mean, they went through this very, very public scandal, and I'm aware that they went through family counseling or marriage counseling, and they tried to work past this, and you know, still did appearances together and everything. But he filed to run, obviously, against Senator Cornyn to take his spot. So going from AG to congressman and or senator, and yeah, the timing, of course, is interesting, right? Like, why file it in the middle of a campaign run? And you know, we can all speculate, but even I would say that is probably strategic on her part. I'm sure she did it to kind of hit him in the kneecaps on the middle of his run, right? It's a little bit of a low blow, but I mean, can you blame the woman when he's so publicly done this stuff? And it was before she filed for her divorce a month prior. We ran a story We had gotten reports, and I confirmed that he was at a hotel in Fort Worth, and had been spotted with another woman that wasn't his wife at a hotel in Fort Worth, and we wrote that up. And that was about a month before she filed for divorce. And in her divorce filing, she does cite that she had discovered something recent that he had done, or she cites something recent. So yeah, is the timing crappy and kind of a low blow? Absolutely, but I guess in a way he was kind of, it was the writing was on the wall for that marriage.
Yeah. And maybe, I don't know if you know this, but I ran for governor. So maybe getting it out of their way now before the heat of the action. I mean, maybe she did him a favor without knowing. So, anyway.
Yeah, and he's gonna win. He's gonna win. There's no chance this guy loses. I mean, provided nothing absolutely insane happens. I mean, the guy, 5 more affairs can be exposed in the next 60 days, and he'll still win. It doesn't. People don't care. So
Okay. So I respect your opinion. So then what happens in the general? It's not like Democrats have better morals than conservatives do, but what do you think is going to happen in the general?
well, that's the big question, right? And that's the most important question, right? And they're running through scenarios, and of course, the Cornyn camp cites that they have a better chance in the general than Paxton does. That's the scary part because you've got a lot of Republicans that maybe won't hold their nose and vote for Paxton in the case that he wins, right? Um, he's running against Colin Allred, and Allred's kind of a goofball, especially for the Democrats. Um, but I think recent polling showing that they're in a dead heat within margin of error.
Okay. Okay. So that'll be another interesting one to watch. So now we'll move, I'll stop taking us on tangents. We can do this, you and I, just on the
I
side
love
one day
tangents. Yeah.
over a beer. But so tell us about the redistricting, why it's important, why it happened. And I really want to also hear your opinion about how this plays out in the rest of the country. And then big picture, I'm dying to hear, how this issue gets one way or another resolved because this whole gerrymandering business. But let's start with Texas redistricting, the whole drama, and then where we are today.
Yeah. So traditionally, Republicans, when they win, they don't actually take action with the power that they're given. They'll win an election or they'll win a race or a position, and they sort of just win and they just kind of go into cruise control. With Democrats, you often see that they win and then they start passing a bunch of crazy laws or executive orders or start doing really insane stuff, or what I would consider insane because I'm a Republican, in order to benefit their party and their narratives and their agenda. Again, and kind of reiterating, Republicans will win, and then they just kind of they're very static. They're very passive on how they exercise their power. But you're seeing that change now, specifically with the rise of Donald Trump, right, and his successes. Um, he has kind of inspired the party to be a little more proactive, and that's where this redistricting comes in, right? Now you've got Texas, who has done incredibly well for as a Republican state, actually gaining more ground than prior years, despite all of the people moving to Texas. We're actually doing better as a Republican state, and Republicans are getting more wins. And now they're taking advantage of that. They're saying we won, we're going to redistrict, and we're going to draw these districts to benefit the winner, and that benefit, then that winner is for Republicans. And, Democrats are, of course, upset about it. They fled the state for a while. They've staged sleepovers at the Capitol, protesting, and none of that matters because it's going to pass. It actually passed the House yesterday. It got pushed over back to the Senate to finalize. They will finalize that today, and then it'll be on the governor's desk probably this afternoon or later next week, and he'll sign it, and we'll be good to go.
Okay, so for our audience, this redistricting is going to favor Republicans in the congressional seats that they will have in Texas, and consequently, as you might or might not know, our audience, that right now it's about 219 to 216 or some very, very close numbers. So this would make a very big difference. Now that it's passed. Um, so so let's take somebody who's listening to our show and who consider themselves fair. fair, and they believe that, politicians are bad, and at the end of the day, if you can tell them something is fair, you're doing a good job. I've seen some of the gerrymandering in Illinois and in places like this, mostly Democrat, actually, California, where 40% of the electorate is voting Republican, but the Republican delegation is like 17% of the total. So that I can make the case that's not fair, of course, and so can the rest of America. When Texas gets done, will it look like this weird puzzle of having redistricted things so that even though, Colin Allred got 44% against Ted Cruz, now it's going to be 70-30 Republican? Is that
Yeah,
tit for tat?
absolutely. Like being full, yeah, absolutely, being completely transparent. Republicans have drawn this to benefit themselves, and it is not fair. And I think personally, I mean, this is my opinion. I think that's fine, right? You see this unfairness in Illinois/Chicago, right? You see this in New York. You see this in a lot of Democrat states, and yeah, you're going to see it in Republican states. So Republicans have won. They're going to take advantage of that win, and they're going to draw the maps in ways that benefit them. That's what is it? Elections have consequences, right? And this is unfortunately for Democrats, this is one of those consequences. And so yeah, if you're talking to somebody who's just completely neutral or has no idea about politics, is it fair? Absolutely not. But I think that this is another change in kind of attitude with Republicans in the sense of seizing a victory and taking advantage of that.
Yeah, and Texas is leading the way, but one should assume that Florida will follow. A bunch of red states are going to follow, Indiana, etc. So we're looking. If we're in the middle looking at this, we can say the Democrats have gerrymandered the heck out of the whole thing, and now the Republicans are catching up.
Yeah, Republicans are going to gerrymander their stuff too. And I, again, as a conservative Republican, I think it's a great thing. And, Democrats in other states have responded. Now you've got Gavin Newsom in California. I think it just passed where they're going to push for a vote now to redistrict California. So, everybody's kind of
Yeah,
retaliating against Texas's actions.
it's ironic because California is already heavily redistricted. So I don't know what else, he's going to do, right?
Right.
And it has to pass anyway. So so the way I would explain it then, and tell me if you agree, is this is something that's been done by Democrats forever. That's why the numbers are what the numbers are. Finally, led by Texas, the Republicans are doing it themselves, and we're going to see a scenario where, unfortunately, the polarization and divide is going to grow even more as both sides um redistrict the states where they're in charge.
Right, and the Democrats are not happy with this. They're pushing the narrative that the maps are racist. And here's the problem. And I say this as a Republican, obviously, but I think a normal person or an average person or a neutral person would maybe agree with this. Democrats and liberals progressives have been screaming about racism since what 2015. Everything is racist. Everything doesn't matter what it is. Fashion is racist. Movies are racist. Clothes are racist. Costumes are racist. Like Halloween's racist. Everything's racist, and people have grown tired of it. And they have essentially burned any kind of legitimacy by overusing the term. So if something, and I'm not saying that the maps are racist because they're not, but if when and if an actual racist thing does happen, people don't even believe it anymore because the term has been so loosely thrown around. And so now Democrats are pushing this narrative that, oh, the maps are racist, they hurt people of color. And it's like, well, actually, if they were being honest themselves, the Hispanic base, specifically Hispanic men, have overwhelmingly started trending Republican, actually at a very a serious and very fast rate in Texas. So Democrats are starting to lose a very large chunk of a minority base, and they will end up just being left with blacks and white women. There'll be a party of white women and blacks, and that's all they're going to have left because people are getting tired of it. They're getting tired of the false rhetoric that everything's racist, and I think people are getting tired of the LGBTQ and trans stuff. It's too much, and people are leaving the Democrat Party.
Yeah, you're right. I think on a bunch of issues, they cry wolf one too many times, and unfortunately, you hurt your own credibility because then people don't. All it takes is one time where you're wrong and people prove it wrong, and then you start losing more credibility. So yeah,
Absolutely.
they've cried wolf one too many times on this one. It's interesting what you said. What their party ends up looking like. I wonder, and again, we're diverging into a tangent again. I wonder what the DC actions that the president has taken when I'm a black citizen of DC and my life just got made so much easier and so much safer. I wonder if that's going to have some kind of impact, and start even shifting that vote into our category, because obviously the guy cares and he's just made my neighborhood safer and I can go to the 7-Eleven and not be worried about getting ripped off. So who knows?
Yeah, I think the Republican Party, especially since 2016, has done so much to try to earn the black vote, whether it's the male black vote or the female black vote. And I mean, wasn't it last election or last presidential cycle for Trump that he freed some like black rappers like with an executive order, a pardon or something like that? And it does nothing. I think Trump, if anything, has been stagnant on his support by black men. So it hasn't changed. And I'm not a consultant or strategist by any means, but if I was a strategist, I would almost not really invest in that so much. It seems like a losing battle. I don't think the narrative's changing. Um, like white women, I think, like liberal white women, I think that doesn't matter how bad things get, they're going to still vote a certain way.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are one issue voters. And I think that liberal white women tend to be in that category, and it has to do with abortion. And the world can fall apart, but just keep keep me my choice. To the point that you were saying about the vote or the block vote, it reminds me of an expression I always when I'm talking to people and I'm traveling around the world, especially in Europe. If you grow up and your parents and your grandparents grew up supporting Real Madrid, you support Real Madrid and you don't know why,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
uh, you know, you're from Philly, you're an Eagles fan, and you always will be an Eagles
Yeah.
fan. So I
We're
think there's
products
some
of
of
our
that.
environment in a lot of cases. Yeah.
There's some of that, and it's just, something. It's an interesting point you made, which is if you were a strategist, you would stop. Although what I'm seeing is the left's main target was white males, but that's beginning to move to all males, and that's gonna make non-white males go, wait a minute. I'm beginning to see that more and more, and I wonder if that would have an impact. Meaning, it won't be outreach by Republicans; it's just going to be overreach by the other side.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, the problem with Democrat targeting now is like, for example, when they target Hispanics, and I've said this quite a few times, Democrat strategists and consultants, they continuously target the Latino community, and they think that all Latinos are the same. And when you and I don't even speak Spanish if that tells you the kind of Hispanic I am. I don't even speak the language.
Yeah,
I don't know the language, but I do know enough that Mexicans, Puerto Ricans, Cubans, Venezuelans, they're all different. And in fact, they all hate each other in different ways and in very serious ways. So when you have these like affluent white liberal women or these liberal consultants or liberal white people that want to do all of this shilling and promoting to Hispanics, they treat them all as if they're just one same exact ethnicity. Like it's almost like labeling all Asians as Asian. Like they're all completely Japanese, Koreans, Chinese, Taiwanese. They all are very, very, very different, and so they fail a lot in this minority outreach because they label them all as one thing, and then they wonder why these groups are starting to leave. And instead, I think the Republican Party would benefit more as just pushing out messaging that's just pro-American. We are all, or if you're on our side, you are a pro-American person. We are a pro-liberty person. We want to be able to make a living for our family, to be able to have good health care, and to be able to afford things. I think those are like winning messages for people nowadays. And this other stuff that the Democrat Party keeps focusing on is trans stuff and all this weird stuff. Like people, you see it on TV and you see it in the person. You're just kind of like you're taken aback by it. It's like this isn't this doesn't affect me on my day to day basis. Like, and it doesn't affect most Americans. You go and interview any American. It doesn't matter if it's a Democrat or Republican. You ask them what is something that's affecting you, literally you, every single day. They're not going to say abortion. They're not going to say trans rights. They're going to say the economy. Everybody's struggling right now to make a living. And if the first party to just really, really focus on that is going to win.
Yeah. One of one of my big pushes as someone who's gotten the amazing opportunity to come to this country and live the American dream is the American dream, which is exactly what you described. I want to work hard. I want to take care of my family. I want to watch sports. I want to go to church on Sunday. And other than that, just keep me safe, and as much as you can, don't BS me. You know, and I think that's really that's the audience, that I'm reaching to, by the way. And this American dream story is very, very important, because if we don't keep that ideal, which is the American dream, then we're no different than anybody else.
Right, and
And
the dream you're describing is starting to go away. There was this show growing up called Married with Children, and I reference this a lot because it was Al Bundy. He was a shoe salesman, and I think his wife was a stay-at-home mom, and he had 3 kids, a two-story house, and a stay-at-home wife, all on a shoe salesman's salary. And that
yeah,
wasn't like a weird thing back then. You could do that. And nowadays, like you can't even you can definitely almost can't have if you're making a median wage, like you can't have a single earner household if you want to have a child or even own a home. It's
yeah,
impossible. So that American dream starting to fade away very very quickly, almost irreparably. And I think one of the parties, and I really don't care who it is, but one of the parties desperately needs to figure that out.
yep. And I think, interestingly, that's a big part of my agenda. And I got to speak at a couple of rallies in the presidential election last year, and that's all I talked about was the American dream. And again, I have an advantage that I've actually lived it, even coming from outside. So, jumping subjects again. So, anything more you want to tell us about redistricting? And if not, I want to hear what else you're doing, because what you do it fascinates me.
Yeah, appreciate it. So yeah, redistricting is huge. It's going to benefit all Americans, right? All, especially conservatives, right? If you care about this country and the American dream, this is going to benefit. Our Texas redistricting is going to benefit you, even if you don't live in Texas. It gives us a lot more wins, right? And the Democrats are massively upset about it. A lot of them, almost all of them fled the state, right? They went to New York and they went to Illinois, which are Democrat gerrymandered states. So they're complaining about gerrymandering in Texas, and then they flee
Yeah.
to states that are gerrymandered by Democrats. Just like, okay. And then they come back, and then they were forced to sign permission slips promising to come back to work on the following Wednesday, and they had DPS escorts with them. So if you were a Democrat and you reluctantly came back to Texas to work, um, you were allowed to leave the capital provided that you agreed to a DPS escort. So a DPS, officer was following you around everywhere to make sure you showed up for work. And you had
Yeah.
some Democrats refuse to sign it, and instead they staged sleepovers in the Capitol. And this is all performative, right? Like I've been saying this since day one, even when they left. Like we're gonna pass this thing. It's gonna pass. Doesn't matter. It's just a matter of when it passes in the next 90 days or so. And of course, it did pass. So yeah, something that's going to benefit everybody. So I'm really excited about that. As far as other stuff we're working on, we've been really focused on one something that we really focus on is uncovering scams that are going on recently. That a lot of people, if you're a user on social media, especially Twitter/X, right? There's a big thing going on where politicians or consultants or PACs are paying political celebrities to take or announce political statements or political stances or push agendas in exchange for cash. That's not reported, and that has been a huge. It's essentially propaganda, paid campaigning that doesn't require any disclosures, financial disclosures, and that's a huge problem. We broke the story on 2 years ago, and we've continued to cover, and we will continue to cover. So that's something that we're keeping an eye on.
So I look forward to following that. I'm gonna be paying a lot of attention to that because I think that that's something that's very, very important. Um, Anything else that you might think about that my audience should be thinking, looking at, thinking about, maybe even ideas for future shows of mine?
Yeah, as far as stuff that we cover, I'm blessed to be in a state that's huge. We're bigger than most countries. I often joke that our parking lots are sometimes bigger than several cities and overseas. So a lot of what we cover is specifically Texas based, and I would say for your audience, yeah, you don't live in Texas, and maybe you don't even visit Texas, but a lot of what we do kind of sets the stage for Republican kind of narratives that trickle down into or trickle over into the other states, Florida as well. So kind of paying attention to what Texas is doing is really important. And as far as like what audience should be aware of, like the messaging and stuff that you see online from your favorite influencer or political celebrity, you just got to be careful to take that with a grain of salt to see if like they're being paid for it or if it comes across as a paid message. It's kind of funny. I've seen a ton of political celebrities making political statements about Texas and endorsing people, and they've previously never ever talked about Texas. So it's kind of a sign to me that did you get paid for this or something? And so it's very interesting.
Good. Okay. And then uh so so you made the decision not to take money from anyone, and that's something I find very respectable. What drove that?
Yeah. So my one of my favorite movies and as a venture capitalist, maybe you'll disagree, is The Social Network. It's kind of a story about how Facebook started. It's one of my favorite movies, and there's a specific scene in the movie where I can't remember the guy who founded Napster is telling Zuckerberg, a young Zuckerberg, he's like, Zuckerberg's co-founder of Facebook is off in like New York or something, trying to find like donors and people to invest in the company. And this Napster guy is telling Zuckerberg, like, you're here in California while your buddy's out in New York trying to get money. He's like, the Facebook isn't even a thing yet. It's not popular. It's not anything. And he's out trying to raise money. He's like, you've got to create a product or a service or a company that has a brand and is offering something before you try to capitalize on it. And he's like, it's got to be cool. It's got to be something before that. And so I took that to heart when I started Current Revolt. I funded it completely on my own salary. I was working I call it a normie job, a 9 to 5 sales job, office job, while also running this news outlet. And for 5 years, we ran the site with just kind of like a once a week paywall. But the site was completely not paywalled, and we of course take donations, but I have found, and I'm kind of new to the donation space, that anything with a comma in it, as far as donation goes, it comes with a string attached. Somebody wants something. And so we have stayed away from that. We have avoided being bought out. We've avoided taking money for stories. I can tell you infinite stories of people that have offered me cash in exchange for writing hit pieces, or for even killing stories, or for even trying to avoid covering stories. I've had uh, influencer or political influencers or presidents of political organizations offer me cash not to publish stories. I've had politicians offer me money to write hit pieces about their opponents, and we avoid all that. And it, it's it's made me realize that if this is happening to me at this scale, it's definitely happening on much higher scales for much larger companies. And so the media sphere is really interesting with the finances. But if you don't take the money, they can't tell you what to do. And we haven't taken the money, and I run things the way I want to run it. So
Well, again, as I said before, I strongly respect that and keep it up.
thank you, thank you.
I think it will keep you, you will keep your eye on the ball, And you will be true to yourself, and you will be true to your audience, which is really what's the most important thing. So I again, good for you. And if you ever need business advice, I do this thing I call Silicon Valley to Main Street. Anything, whether it's strategy or financial, you just feel free to reach out. I can be there for you. I I do
Thank you.
have a story you will enjoy, because you said the social network and Zuckerberg thing, the fundraising. So this is a couple of years later. This is inside the Beltway, but you'll appreciate it. So a couple of years later, Facebook is now, pretty big, and VCs are fighting to put money in the company. So it's the opposite, right? They don't need cash anymore. They just have people who just want to be associated with them. And everybody, all the big names are, whining and dining and hoping and trying to call and so on. So they end up getting a meeting with a very prominent venture capital firm in Silicon Valley. And the meeting was supposed to be at, I'm paraphrasing, like 10 o'clock in the morning. Zuckerberg and his guys show up at 10:45 wearing pajama bottoms to this meeting with the venture capitalist. And they walk in and they're like, okay, what do you want? And it was just like, and even then, I think they did take money from these guys. So
Wow.
it, it's like the irreverence and being successful, and I found that fascinating, and it kind of reminded me a little bit of how you do about a bunch of irreverent stuff. So inside the Beltway story, you mentioned social networks, so I thought I'd tell you that.
Yeah, it's funny. I
Um,
don't know if you've seen the movie. That scene that you described is actually kind of in the movie. They go to a meeting and Zuckerberg shows up in his pajamas in a bathroom. And yeah, yeah. So I guess that was a common thing for them back in the day for sure.
well,
That's funny.
these Silicon Valley types, they have a peculiar sense of humor, especially the entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
uh that, but well, whatever, it works, it works. So well, this was incredibly helpful. I think what people should take from this is that, if you do the math, if Republicans add 5 seats, that's really the equivalent of 10 seats, and 217 to 215 is now 222 to 210. Huge margin for the president and his agenda, if that comes up. And if, as usual, they say in the middle, in the middle cycle primaries, the party that and has a presidency loses seats. If anything, that's an insurance policy to that. So what you're covering and what you have covered has a very big impact on the country and the direction it's going to take. So we'll see how that all plays out. We'll see what happens in California. We'll see if anybody else wants to, on the blue side, wants to gerrymander, and of course we're going to see who wants to gerrymander on the red side. And at some point, as a fair, I think our founding fathers didn't mean for it to be this way, but at some point, I'd like to see maps of voters, and I'd like to see the representation uh, emulate what the voting patterns are in a particular state. And but that's way ahead of us. And right now, you're right. They play by certain rules. We've got to play by the same rule, because that's it's high margin games, and you got to do what you got to do. And like you said, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think
Any
a lot of this is trending us towards a scary future of when it gets to that point of like AI running governments. It sounds like I'm wearing a tin hat thing, but people have theorized this before where it's like, okay, let's get somebody neutral without emotions to make these decisions. And so eventually you'll start seeing AI political consultants, and then eventually you will have maybe AI running certain aspects of government, and that's going to be a little crazy.
Well, one of my themes is that for some reason government is the last thing to get disrupted.
Mm.
So
Hmm.
even with
Yeah,
AI, we don't know what
yeah,
would
true.
happen. I'm a big believer in disruption, but for some reason, until literally like 6, 7 months ago, it was business as usual over there when the whole world has changed. So we'll
Yeah.
see. All right, sir. Thank you so much. Have a
Thanks for
great
having me.
weekend, and let's stay in touch.
Yeah, please. And thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me
Thanks,
on
of
your show.
course.
Nice
Thanks,
meeting you.
Tony. All right.